Radio OKiTALK, Radio OKiTALK, von Mensch zu Mensch.
Dear listeners, hello and welcome. Good evening, good morning, wherever you are, to this edition now today with Bryan Lahr, the Wizard of Oz. Welcome, Bryan.
Thank you, Raphael. It's really a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to today, especially after last week. We got bombed.
Yes, as those who synchronistically listened in, we had the most synchronistic disconnect, actually real internet connectivity issues in this day and age, 2019, most strange happenings. However, this could not, of course, deter us to simply set up another show. And in this case, most kindly, I'd ask you in some ways to repeat what you started to state last time, which is, well, basically our topic is all about, let's say, energy cleansing, auras, sigils, creating your own divination system, numerology, archetypes, understanding the truth of reality, understanding how to affect reality with your mind, both on a meta level and on the very, very specific and physical level. So, yeah, kindly, Bryan, if you would wish to expand on your journey and your process.
Oh, I'm happy to. Um, First of all, I'm an old guy. I'm like 61 years old, so I've been doing this pretty much the entirety of my life. I started when I was 6, and just had some crazy experiences that let me know I was a little different. So anyway, I have always been an artist and a musician and a magician. And when I was about 18, I had been playing in bands and selling my artwork, and I had a very strange thing happened to me where an object moved across the top of my desk. And it really wasn't like a wind susceptible object. It was something rather large and it moved rather far. And I just got this blast up my spine that I had just witnessed something more than what the world was. So from that time, I got into, one of my first really productive dives was into the whole world of Carlos Castaneda. I don't.
Briefly, to clarify, when did this first event happen to you?
Um, this is like I'm 18, 17, 18. Yeah, a girlfriend of mine who was really trippy gave me my first Carlos book, and man, I got into that, and the whole everything about the way he was describing stuff was seeing the luminous egg of your energy, and the things that were happening kind of mirrored some of the things that were happening for me and really rang uh super true for me, that like this was really worthwhile pursuing. So I read the whole series of the books like many times over the years, and that was one of my first ventures into really trying to start doing some telekinetic work myself. Well, as life does, I got married, and I got into my career, which was advertising. I was an art director, creative director, photographer, and was working at really intense and creative agencies and just having a blast, but there wasn't much energy for anything else. And one afternoon, the guy that owned the agency, his name's Joey Ryman, um, brought in a woman who was what he called was a church. I'm not sure that was the right word for it. And she started giving a speech, and I was really kind of mad because I didn't want any kind of religion here. I'm in a renegade ad agency. What are you doing? So it turns out this woman was part of a group that did telekinetic stuff. and she did a couple of effects for the whole creative department, moving a glass across the table and spinning a little pencil around and around, and it was like so easy for her. And I saw how much of a skill it had become. And I was just absolutely obsessed with that from that moment on. And I started doing a lot of my own things. And I got into a bunch of different um, Western magical traditions. Like I was initiated into the Golden Dawn and um, a couple of other of those styles, and got heavily into that for almost a decade. And while there were really many, many, many great things out of this, uh, not the least of which was the tarot deck for me, um, I still knew that it wasn't what I needed. So I moved on, and one of the other many. Uh, paths I took was an African religion called Ifa, and I was an African witch doctor's apprentice and initiated myself. And that was so completely 180 degrees different for me. And as it turns out, I really kind of needed something, a particular kind of magic I got from that discipline to. Uh, Alleviate something that I had made many lifetimes ago and I needed to take care of in this lifetime. So once that was completed, I realized that everything I had studied up until then had been relying on outside energies, entities, gods, deities, angels, demons, whatever it was. And and having to ask something else to help was just rang so wrong. It was like, no, that's not the way this is supposed to be. So I discovered this the guy that's my current teacher now. Okay, and I'm about let's see, I'm about 44, 45 at the time, and I discovered this guy who actually had superlative telekinetic skills. And through a friend of mine, wound up finally being able to connect with him after about 4 years of questing. And once we hooked up, we didn't have an immediate, oh, okay, I'm going to teach you. We talked and had a really nice conversation, struck up conversations after that, but nothing really took off. And during that course in time, as life does, I had a number of traumatic emotional events occur all at one time and just kind of nuclear bombed me. And I found myself reacting to that by getting very, very heavy and eating. And I blew up to almost like 400 pounds. So I got very ill and came down with diabetes too. And I was feeling so bad. My brain was shutting down. My eyes were shutting off. Everything was collapsing. And I knew I was really in trouble. So I went to my regular doctor who saw me for 5 minutes and sent me directly to the emergency room, who proceeded to inform me that I had a blood sugar level of 650, which is diabetic coma level. And he told me, dude, if you hadn't gotten here when you did, you'd be having a funeral for you instead of getting you better. So on the way into, when I pulled into the parking lot, hang on one second. When I pulled into the parking lot, all of a sudden I get this phone call, and it happens to be this guy. And he's like, "Hey, how you doing? Haven't talked to you in a while. What's going on?" And I said, "Listen, I'm getting ready to go into the emergency room. I've got blood sugars out through the roof, and I'm kind of in trouble." And he's like, "Dude, why didn't you call me? Why, Okay, here's what we're gonna do." We talked for a while, and he made a deal with me that if I would participate with him and get me well, I'd lose 100 pounds, I'd get my organs back in shape, and be ready to go, he would teach me my first effect, which, I mean, that was like getting the lottery for me. And that's exactly what happened. I went into the hospital. I kind of let that person die altogether. I hung on to nothing, and I started pulling out the things that I liked and wanted to keep in the new version. And I got on it, and in 11 months, I lost 165 pounds, got in the best shape of my life, and he, in fact, uh, started teaching me first effect. Before I go to that, I need to tell you about something that happened at the beginning of the healing process for me. Um, and I'll talk more about this later, but he was making a little metal disc for me that was heavily programmed. And in order to do the programming correctly, you need to get the set points of the individual. And those are the little light centers that are happening in your aura that are the things that tell you how to run. So he was going to capture those and then devise the programming for it once that was really precise. So I go over to his place and we spend a couple hours listening to some really intense music and jacking up, and I'm holding this coin in my hand the entire time, and I'm pouring my energy into it through my right hand, and we keep going and keep going and keep going. About 3 hours later, he says, "Okay, I think we're ready." And we step up to his kitchen table, and you have to understand the whole house. This is very late at night. Whole house is dark except for one glowing red light, and you can see, but it's very, very, very dim. I was able to see in the middle of the kitchen table there was a crystal wine glass, and he goes, "Now go over there, put the coin in the wine glass, and then stand up against the wall, and no matter what, do not say a word." I'm like, "Okay, well, I guess I'm going to see something here." So he stands in front of the table, about 2, 3 feet away from it, tilts his head back, closes his eyes. Ooh, and I can see this kind of energies kind of happening around him. And all of a sudden, from his solar plexus, I'm noticing the room starting to light up. And I'm looking at his face, and it's like that monster lighting, that movie monster lighting, where you have the flashlight right under the person's face. And his face is lit up, and it gets brighter and brighter and brighter. At which point, I threw my hand over my mouth so I didn't make a sound. I'm going, "Oh my God, I can't believe what I'm seeing." And the whole entire room became illuminated. So I'm like, "All right, what's going on?" That was good enough for me. I thought that was the effect. That was just the charge up. So he let that die back down. He stuck out his right hand and he pointed it at the wine glass, which really quickly started to slide across the surface of the table. And I'm like, "No, no." And I'm looking for the wire and I'm looking for the trick. I'm a street smart guy. I don't, I'm from Missouri, the show me state, man. I've got to know it's like real, and I don't like to be fooled. So I'm like looking for every possibility that could be happening. He's too far away from the table. There's no connection to that at all. No magnet could be doing that. And it keeps sliding all the way across the table to the edge, and he lets it fall off and shatter on the floor, and then picks up the coin. And that was the point. And that was the pure imprint of me that he then used to program the disc that he gave me to help me. And now this is November 8th. That'll be 12 years ago, and I'm still I'm still in the best shape of my life, and I have no signs of diabetes or any of those things. And I'm eternally grateful to him to help me. So at the end, when it's time to do the effect, um, the effect is spinning a long metal rod that is balanced on top of a curved, rounded glass surface. It doesn't have to be glass, but that's a really good conductor. So I put together a little rig for myself. I took a lens out of an old photo enlarger that was flat on the back and had a really great curvature to it, and an old Radio Shack boombox antenna, fully extended, and you balance that on top of the glass so that it's equal and level. And then with your energy, you push on one end or the other and make it start spinning around in circles. Now, that sounds like a really silly trick, but what's happening with that is that you're taking energy, elevated energy, and channeling it down and dialing it down till it has density, and being able to focus it out of your hand and actually move a physical thing in the real world. Ah, ah, ah. Okay, so he gave me 3 weeks, a deadline. I'm always good with a deadline. So every night, and his mode is practice late at night, after midnight to 3 o'clock is a perfect time, because the astral sea is as calm as it's going to be. Everybody's sleeping, there's no traffic jams, there's no people fighting, or minimal, and that is the calmest that can be. And at the beginning, when you're trying to get control over those energies, any interference at all can throw you way off. So it's like every night, midnight to 3, I'm out there like pushing on this thing. And I know I have enough energy, but it is just sitting there staring at me like I'm an idiot. And I'm going, oh my God, move, please, move. So 3 weeks, it's the night before my deadline, and I don't want to call him up the next day and tell him I failed. Not that that would have been the end of it, but it was kind of a thing to accomplish, which I felt really capable of doing. So I'm pushing and pushing and pushing, and I jacked it up so hard. And over on the left-hand side of me, I have a really big garden outside that I work, and a bird chirps at me, which took my attention away, and the rod moved like a third of the way around. And I jumped up straight in the air, honest to God, 10 feet. And the lesson for me in that was that I needed to let it go. I kept pumping, jacking it up, but I was still connected to it. And I needed to release the thing in order for it to happen. And that started it. So I took a rig to work. I had a mobile rig with me. I took with me to anywhere I traveled to. And I was on that thing every day, just pushing it and pushing it, pushing it, pushing it. And the way it makes you feel when you get jacked up, when you get really, really big, you feel 10 times bigger than your regular body. And there's this feeling of invincibility, like anything is possible. And that was the core takeaway from that moment for me, that whatever my uh, uh, definition of my personal impossibility was, just got shattered. And it felt amazing. And then all of a sudden, if you can do that, then you build on that from the next one. If you can do that, then you build on that. Then you do that. And you keep getting more and more complex. I took it to kind of a crazy level. I kept spinning it. And during the course of a year, I got up to being able to do 1,000 spins and do 4 of them at one time. I think, Raphael, I showed you a video with me doing 3 of them once. That was pretty cool. And then that, just like everything else, that's one little tool. That's the letter A in the alphabet, and it becomes one of the tools that you build up as a whole toolbox full of stuff to be able to go through life in a abundant and happy, joy-filled way. And that is exactly what this this practice has brought to me. Um,
There's of course many many different interesting concepts that are integrated in what you had mentioned, including the idea, of course, of not only charging up energy but also letting it go. I was actually kind of waiting for that point to come up, and maybe just to make it more relatable, because after all, as you have, I think, explained very well, it's about in a sense downward modulating higher energies to then make them, for example, magnetheric, so as to be able to move things that are attracted to magnets or that are magnetic. But then also it goes even into the direction of really playing with the elements or even potentially manifesting objects and so on. So for some people who may not be familiar with the even science of how these things can interact and how these interconnections could look like, this may appear pretty far out. But in order to maybe give another reference, something that also I tried, so I can speak of this personally, is the so-called rice hado experiment by Masaru Emoto, who made these ice crystal pictures, which actually were an art project. But anyhow, the experiment anyone can do for themselves. It's called rice hado, HADO experiment. And maybe you're familiar with it, Brian. You simply
yeah,
cook rice.
I love that. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and so you just very briefly, you simply cook rice, and then you put it in three containers. One with you put on it love, one neutral, one negative. Then you can meditate on it. You can do it every day or whatever. I just made these three containers, meditated on it for 2 days, then I just left them. But the results were staggering and very, very obvious and very much in line to what many others. You can just YouTube that to anyone listening and check the results of others, but really don't believe anyone, just do it yourself. And here also you can, in a sense,
That's the way to go. You know, if you hear something that interests you, don't just accept or deny it. Try it, you know? I mean, that's the way you actually know whether it works or not.
precisely. And just for me personally, I mean, I was already into these things, but this was like the perfect proof for me. I was like, okay, I can obviously affect, in this case, it's deterioration of the rice over a distance without touching it, without any other external influence. Actually, the only connection there is mind and thought and belief and energy. So for me, that was the, let's say, breaking point in terms of individual proof through a simple experiment. And that's something anyone can try. And I encourage everyone to try. And you can be as exact and scientific or clean and so on about this as you like. Um, I would say, even though there's also, of course, always skeptics and so on, that probably the vast majority of people that actually honestly try this and don't have the most crazy belief blocks against it actually will have similar results.
You know, you just hit on the main wall to getting through this is your skeptic and programming that it's impossible. You know, it if you go into it with that mindset, there's no way that you will actually be able to accomplish it because you're in fact stopping yourself.
Yeah, and that, of course, being the whole tricky thing about all of these ideas of whether it's very practical life tools or whether it's even creating physicalized effects where people would say, oh, well, this is obviously elemental magic or something. But it's always about, as you mentioned, one's individual's beliefs. And of course, then one has to be very, very honest with oneself and really check, yeah, for any barriers and any negativity, any lack of self-worth and self-love and self-empowerment. However, still, I think experiments such as the one I mentioned, of course, also those you mentioned, but the one I mentioned, I think, is actually, let's say, quite close to the consensus reality that it can be a good, at least has good success chances, let's say, for many.
I wanted to interject here something that I find useful in dealing with that scenario. You know, I was out for 3 weeks every night, and when you'd stop at the end of that night, it wasn't a great feeling. Uh, but I looked at it not as a failure. And I did this visualization for myself that the effect that I wanted to do was on the other side of this like bulletproof glass. And that every time I went up and practiced, I got to bang on the glass a little bit and crack it a little bit more until finally it shattered. And seeing the glass crack and making knowing I was making progress towards getting something that was difficult to do. I mean, I it's not easy. you know, you have to really have desire and commitment to doing it to get through the layers and layers and layers down to the real you that is absolute pure creative light. And that's when miracles happen. And then that's when things can happen in your everyday life. I can do materializations. I lock my key in my car, I materialize my keys in my hand. That's a very practical thing. Being able to get the funds you need to survive and make your way through the world. That's a very practical need. You know, not to mention that on an on a note that doesn't involve what anyone else thinks. It it's your opportunity to find your real potential and to make the most out of this incarnation and find the things that really give you passion and joy and the things you really want.
What's of course so interesting about this, and in some ways I would just use this terminology, which probably is wrong, but to talk in a way of lesser magic and greater magic, in a sense of, in a way, the lesser magic being elemental effects, manifestations, even of money or whatever, which of course at face value may seem very appealing to many people. But there is also this, what I would now call greater magic, this idea of relegating control and letting go of all of these things, even though while still being focused and, let's say, action oriented and really being true to one's own excitement. But then even having this opportunity at the same time using very similar tools that you mentioned, or even the same, but then not so much focusing on specific changes or being able to manifest specific things in this very direct way, even though, of course, that's super interesting, but then actually delegate that to the higher self and just basically say, okay, I don't want to fix this altogether, but I will just allow the greater reality, so the complete reality, just to bring whatever I may need, whatever effects these may be, or whatever changes, whatever abundance, whatever experience, and just allow my higher self to manifest that for me. If you can catch my drift, or would like to talk about this very interesting delineation between these two apparently separate aspects.
Hmm. Well, I think that's a very different philosophical perspective. And in reality, I use those things as examples of pure practicality. But the truth of it is, as you evolve and grow in your energy work and realizing what kind of an energetic being you actually are, that that filters into every part of your life. You know, the focus to be able to do that first effect wound up falling into how I did pretty much everything. and and I didn't set out to get those things when they happened. Those were just the natural effects of working your muscle on focusing. And my mindset is, it's great to roll with the flow and the wave, but I don't know that I would have been able to experience the things I have had I done that. I kind of did that through most of the first part of my learning. And as I got more focused and I got more uh, specific about what I knew I needed, then those things showed up. I think too that we seek similarity so much these days, and people trying to be the same or do it the way someone else do it. At this point in my life, you know, every single person is a unique map. And what works for one, you know, doesn't work for somebody else, And I think that you obviously have joy in that mindset. So that obviously works for you. So, on that level, it's like awesome, you know? I think there's always I'm a curious Aquarian. I always love new surprises. So
Yes, you were saying so.
ah, I muted out there. So each round of the corner, each time you learn a new specific effect, that that is like a tube of paint to my artist. And going off and exploring those things no one else has done that I know of. And that is such an amazing joy and bliss state for me, and that may not be that way for anyone else. It works with the way I'm wired and constructed, and you know we're uh, we're products of our genetics and our locations and our you know social interactions, and so I think everybody has their own specific uh, cosmology to build. And out of that experience, and the thing I've been working with my teacher now for the longest time, is not following any specific cosmology. Like there are tools that you learn, like being able to move stuff and your intuitive skills, but those are all really just tools in the box, not the end themselves. The joy then is to go off with that toolbox and see where it takes you and explore and do things and share with other people. And it's 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 been really nice to find acceptance and belief in the path I'm on for me, you know, and I don't ever try to dissuade anyone from the path they're on at the moment. Because sometimes the path you're on at the moment, even if it doesn't wind up being the right path, that time with the Golden Dawn, places I worked, really valuable, really great, really wonderful, you know. But out of those, building my own cosmology, I've taken different pieces of those, like the tarot. That was one of the first ways that you and I connected.
Yeah, of course, there's a lot to say about this. I was just basically relating the other side of it, the whole idea of letting it go and allowing your higher self to handle things, just to also make it kind of more relatable and maybe emphasize that what I also always like to mention is that we're always manifesting the entirety of our own reality in every moment, anyhow. It's all a perfect reflection. So we can also let these things go and allow them to be let's say, handled by the higher self in a way that's still logical and seems kind of normal to us, even though then everyone knows this, you're in a good place with good people. You think of something, you ask a question in your mind, it gets answered immediately. Whatever you need is handed to you immediately. So I would say it's pretty close to instant manifestation and manifestation magic at times. Of course, what you're mentioning, and that's also one of the reasons I really like talking to you, and I'm, in a sense, very much impressed and very actually joyous about the idea and about the things that you are sharing, is because, of course, I'm very aware that we have this very direct possibility as well to influence everything, also in a seemingly non-rational way or non-Newtonian physics, limited understanding type way, but in this actual, quantum, whatever, telekinesis way, however, then it can be explained. So anyhow, I just wanted to show both of these sides. And yeah, of course, if anything there's you would like to still mention about this, kindly do. And aside from this, regarding the tarot, yeah, that's how we initially connected. That's the true story, and also why I was impressed with the Wizard of Odd tarot you created, because first of all, and everyone should check it out, Wizard of Odd tarot, wizard written with a Y, and not of Oz, but Odd, so ODD, ODD. um, Basically, just the fact that the design that you used is super amazing. You can talk a bit about it if you like, and also that you have all these different symbologies and references to other divination systems on the card. So they're actually a reference unto themselves, which I think is pretty cool.
Well, the tarot deck's a perfect example of using your juice for a purpose. So, especially with the major arcana cards, when I went to photograph them, those were produced shooting photographs of burning incense smoke, the incense that was appropriate to that card, and then I mirrored them in half, and they wound up with just some of the most amazing imagery. So before I would start shooting, I would always take the incense and fill it up with everything I knew about that card, and fill it up with my desire to learn everything I could learn about that card, and to ask that actual archetype to show up somewhere in the smoke. And for me, that's exactly what happened. Those cards are kind of like, uh, you know, they really are influenced. What you see is kind of influenced by your own emotional landscape at the time. uh, they're not as straightforward as, say, the Rider Waite deck. They're much more impressionistic. But that's also the thing, that it's 8 years now that I did that deck, and they just keep getting deeper, and I just keep finding more stuff. I keep them next to me all the time, and it's been a great way to use that juice to really magnify that for me. And my intent with the deck was not to do a deck to sell, but to do my absolute Cadillac. If I was going to sit down and design a deck for me, what would I want? And since I had all these other divination systems, the runes and numerology and geomancy and the Odus, I was like, wow, I've never seen that before. So I connected them all in a way that you could do readings in each of those disciplines and check against each other. And it just wound up being such an amazing journey. And talk about a synchronicity. And this was not on purpose, but I started it on the winter solstice and completed it to the day on the equinox. And it just, like, wow, it's been an amazing experience.
Well, I'd say let's play some music and then we'll get back and delve deeper into, well, so many different things we could be talking about. And we are back live. This was Fele in the Twilight from the album The Dream of the Phoenix. Well, I would say also this theme, quite fitting. Humans rediscovering their true potential. And along these lines, Bryan, kindly continue. You were talking about certain, let's say, basic tools in the process of learning
Yes.
manifestation.
Yes. So, there are 4 basic steps for this. One of them, the first step, is recognizing, accessing, and then being able to control your energy inside you with intent. The next, and I'll go into detail on all of these. The next segment of it is the intuitive part of it, and understanding your aura, your light body, its structures, of which it is very, very complex, and the way that it actually is the software that runs your body, which is your hardware. So what's happening out in there is what's going to happen inside you. So that's the second class. And, well, I'll get more into that. The third class is then talking about being able to, you go out on the street corner and you get splashed with a mud puddle by a bus. You go home and you take a shower. And Most people take a shower pretty much every day, but they do nothing for their energy body. And your energy body picks up goo. And I mean, you go to the grocery store, look at all the people that you connect your energy field with and things that can come along with you. And so it's really uh, wise and makes you feel so much better to be able to go in with the knowledge of the bands of the aura from what you just learned, and to be able to clean each one of those and come out of that sparkly clean, and then at the end of that be able to reach down into the earth or wherever you want to get your source of juice up and fill your solar plexus up with just a fresh batch of creative potential. I go out, I start the day like that, and I really do feel like I could just take on anything. Um, and then the last course, or the last part of the course, is actually spinning the rod and doing an effect. And I don't know that I'll go into that in much depth in this one. On my podcast classes, I've got 10 or 12 people actually going for it now, and that is just so exciting. And to see the joy and the surprise in their face when they get it to move. Oh my god, it's moving. I know. That's really great. All right, so the first class is about accessing your energy. You can't be able to even begin to think about being able to move something or send your energy out of yourself unless you can be aware of what your energy inside you, and then being able to do things with it. So there's a couple of exercises. The first one is to try to brighten yourself up from the inside out as hard as you can. Just get super, super bright. And what I mean by that is drawing in energy and taking the energy that you have and exciting it so that it's glowing and it takes on a brighter intensity. Then what you want to do is take that energy from all parts of your body and gather it in your solar plexus, all of it. And you gather and gather and gather, and you keep compressing that ball of energy until it just can't go any further. And at that point, maybe not the first or second time you do it, but shortly, if you're really putting some juice into it, that's going to have some feeling to it. There's going to be a sensation to that. And if you have good intuitive vision, you certainly can see that energy happening. And then once you have it centered right there in your solar plexus, then the next exercise is to be able to move it anywhere in your body you want. So you move it up your spine, down your left arm, down to your left hand, and concentrate every bit of your energy in your left hand, just your left hand. It's really funny when you see people start to get this for the first time and they start to lean to the left just a little bit. I'm like, okay, I got it. And then it's to take that and be able to take that to whatever hand, to be able to move it up and down your legs, to be able to move it all over your body. The really great effect on you with that is that then you can take that energy and run that through things. You can heal yourself. That was really the main way I healed the organs from my diabetes, severe diabetes, and you run energy through those places, and it keeps your cells regenerating, and you'll stay fit and alive for a lot longer if you're using that juice. Okay.
Yes, we're with you. Sounds good to me so far.
Just had to take a little sip there. Hold on.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. So once you're able to actually do that, and you're feeling those places, you can send it wherever you want in your body. Okay, you've completed that step of it. Okay, then the next step is to be able to be aware and actually see your own aura and auras on other people. And the reason for that is that a lot of people hear that concept and they see, little aura drawings of eggs around people, and it's really not like that. Your aura is broken up into many chunks of six bands going out, radiating out from you. And the first six bands are the bands that we live in this incarnation. And the first four bands really relate to the elements. The first band is the really white. It has colors in it, but when you just look at it at first before you do the zoom in, it's just that white inch and a half, 2 inch glow around the outside of your body. And that is your interface between the upper bands and your actual physical body. The second band is the band that's usually the brightest because that's your emotional band. And that's where people are pouring the most energy most of the time. And that's also where you're reacting to outside stimulus in waves all the time. So, whatever the predominant color is of that particular band, that's kind of like when I say, oh man, he's orange. It's because that particular band of his aura is really, really super bright. Okay, then your third band is your mental acuity and planning, making details, and it's very factual. It's not about feelings; it's about information and facts and disposing proper plans. And then the fourth band is your energy interface from the outer bands into that band. And even when you're drawing energy in, say from the earth or you're using the weather, you're drawing that energy in and it's interfacing through the fourth band and then going into you. In all those bands are little concentrated points that kind of glow, and my teacher refers to those as set points. And the way that those are configured throughout the surrounding aura is kind of like the software information telling your body how to run your hardware. And it's possible, being able to use the same kind of energy and focus that you move the rod with, to be able to consciously move a set point to mm, operate from different mindsets, to operate with different coloring for yourself. There's all kinds of matrices of those that look exactly like computers. So that's made it really kind of easy for me to get. Um, then again, your second band, that band, because you feel anger, you feel fear, you feel pain, you feel joy and love, those things leave little residues in that particular band. And um, that's one of the best uses of the grounding technique I'm going to talk about here momentarily. Um, to be able to take each one of those individual bands and again use the energy that you've been able to build up and actually scrape through that and draw through that and clean out any kind of bits of negativity or anything that doesn't belong to you, and ditch that and get rid of it so that your energy is operating in its purest form. And that's when lots of synchronicities and miracles happen without any thought whatsoever. So one of the analogies for this, that I like to use, is that the projective skills, it's like you're sitting in a really nice car in the garage and the door's open, but you have no gas in the car, so you can't really drive out. All you can do is look out the window and see. And I equate the gas to your projective skills. And if you have gas in the car but your windshield is mudded over and you can't see out, you're not going to get very far. So that's why with the the train of learning that I've been on, those things are encouraged equally to develop. And one of the best ways for being able to develop your own ability to see your own aura is to look at yourself in a really dimly lit room in a mirror. predicated by expect yourself to see it, not expecting yourself to see it. Very, very small but crucial difference. If you don't think you're ever going to be able to see it because you haven't till now, that's not really true. I wasn't able to start seeing that until my 30s. And then, it happened really gradually, but every step of the way has been a major reveal and a new level of enjoying that. So that's the mindset between developing your projective skills, your intuitive skills, your receptive skills, rather. And then last, once you've got yourself all nice, sparkly, and clean, you want to keep your environment in the same way and free of any kind of external influences that you don't want to have. So first thing to do is to take your energy and brighten up the first band, and then ground that energy. And I actually say it out loud. I'm grounding my first band. I'm grounding my earth energy. I'm getting rid of any material uh, blockages, any illnesses, anything negative that is manifesting or trying to manifest in the real world. And once I clean that out, I go on to the emotional band, do the same thing. Third band, the same thing. In your third band, there's a thing called unused patterned energy. And that's whenever you make a plan. And okay, and it doesn't need to be something big. Say it's something simple. Say you need to go to the bank. Well, you get your stuff together and you're on your way out the door, you get a phone call, you get distracted into something else, and that trip to the bank never happens. And that piece of energy that you use to program to do that is now going to keep running. That doesn't go away or dissolve. That just keeps going until you get rid of that. So if you think about how many of those over the years, if you don't do anything about those get a little cloudy sometimes. I know that it helps me think clearer. It's improved my memory, and lots of really, really, really good uses for that. And then last but not least is your energy band, and you just want to make sure that everything in there is you and clean. And and you can't really do that effectively without having your projective skills kind of up to a certain level. And the focus of being able to focus on those particular bands, really, really important. Okay, so you've cleaned yourself, you move to your environment. You take that same energy and, well, I'm sorry, I left off the most critical part. After you've scraped all the negative energy off, you now have all this room for really good energy. So that's where you do the charge up. And this is my favorite part. My favorite energy to draw from is way down at the center of the earth, just outside where the magma is liquid and it's still in rotation. It produces a tremendous amount of electromagnetic energy, which just happens to be blue and exactly my color. So I stick my straws in from the bottom of my feet and I reach way down there. And that energy is so pure and undiluted. And man, drawing that up into my solar plexus and filtering it out to my body parts and then out into my aura so it's glowing. Ah, man, you're ready. There's one of my favorite things. Okay, so now that you're all charged up, you want to clean your environment. Um, you take your energy from your solar plexus and project that out into the room. Well, let me say this because people use this a lot. People like to use sage and Palo Santo, and there's a number of things that are reference really frequently. And it's my mindset that, like sage, the smoke to sage is kind of naturally disposed to making things go away, negativity go away. And there are a number of spirits and entities that really don't like it very much. But to really be super effective with it, you need to take that sage stick in your right hand and again, take your energy and pour it into that stick and charge it up with the intent to spotlessly clean your environment. And then when you go around the house with it, now it's got some power behind it, and it's not just relying on the smoke itself. And it also comes with your intent for it to remove everything that's negative. So again, that's another way to use your protective skills. Um, okay, so once you've swept out your whole house and you want to kind of protect that environment, then from your solar plexus, you radiate out a light. I like to do a wall at a time. Some people like to do the whole room. I like to send it out and like hit the corners of the room and fill it up with juice and program it up to just keep me safe and sound and free of distractions, especially when I'm writing or doing art or I'm having a practice experience that I don't want to be interrupted. I always do this, and then you just fill up your room with little panels of energy, and you're good to go. And that's a really good way to sleep. That's a really good way to work when you have to really concentrate. It just winds up keeping you uh, uh, clean and pristine, and your energy pure, and the energy that you're in pure. So those are the three main tools that you need to get going to do telekinetic work. And if you master those, there's a really, really, really great probability that you'll have very good success in this endeavor. So
Let's say the way you describe it, almost say sounds simple enough. Where to subscribe?
well, the process is in fact simple. The finding your own light and finding your desire for that, not quite as easy. But the thing about it is, you just can't accept, oh, I tried once and it doesn't work, you know? You just I knew there was something for me and I just couldn't. I kept getting distracted in the other areas, but I always wound up coming back to this. And it's really changed my life in so many profound and unexpected ways. I can't even begin to tell you. And the outlook I have for the rest of my life for infinite possibilities of exploration. Wow, an artist and an Aquarian. What better outlook?
Yes, well, and ultimately, again, I mean, we're essentially talking about the real world practical version of throwing fireballs in a sense. What I just mean by that is
Exactly.
that much of this knowledge or information, of course, has been subsumed into popular culture, into superheroes, into mythology. But the point being that these are actual features and abilities we all actually naturally have access to. That's also why there are all these stories about them.
It's the actual essence of what we really are. It's not like something outside of us we're going to go get in. It's something that's been asleep for a long time that we're waking up. It's the core of who we are. And dude, when when you get your intuitive abilities to be to a degree where you can travel to, you can change the frequency on the radio dial and be somewhere else, and you get to explore all those places. Raphael, man, I've just seen some of the most amazing things I never even imagined. And that's kind of a really great uh, product out of all of this.
Yeah, I mean, both in terms of, let's say, general curiosity, trippiness, and also practical application. All of these ideas, of course, you mentioned, can be very, very, very beneficial, and of course have immense implications. Another of the reasonings, let's say, why we talk is also because I would, in a sense, just like to, or you are, in a sense, demonstrating that even here, even today, let's say, even this veil of apparently physicalized objective reality can be pierced, and many of these stories many may have heard about, let's just say, actually are true, or you can simply prove it to yourself just by still undergoing some level of training. But I also have the great impression, aside from some children now having the benefit of receiving proper education and not getting so cut off from their manifestation abilities, also the simple fact that more and more individuals now are open to these possibilities, investigating them and developing it, that this also for the human race in totality is in some ways piercing the morphogenetic field. Even just the awareness that these things are possible and can be learned, that potentially, I mean, we will see how it pans out, but potentially that then we may have quite a percentage of the population of all ages then actually being able to do also physical effects to varying degrees, of course, along with many other skills, such as, I would say, first and foremost, empathy and telepathy, which may then obviously give us entirely new possibilities aside from any
Yeah,
smart
right?
technological advances we may make.
That's a truth.
Yes, I'm already done. Thank you. You have the con.
Oh, yes. Yeah. You know, I, I think it's really important that you find what's good for you and accept that there are possibilities that are beyond your understanding, and don't let it, my teacher and I always kid, wait, I just admit I'm crazy, I'm insane, that's all right, I accept it wholeheartedly, because that means that I think that the world that you live in is bogus. So it doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks about it, because this is a personal journey rather. It's finding these parts in you that is real awareness on so many more dimensional and energetic levels, and finding the other yous that live in the other upper bands. Oh my god. Yeah, so I think that there are a lot of people that are waking up to the possibility, and I think that there are enough people out there that are doing it right now that can show people and actually help them break through that. That it'll take a while, but it's evolving, and there certainly is a lot more. In a couple hundred years ago, you wouldn't get called crazy; you'd get burned at the stake. So I think we've come a long way, and certainly in the last 50 years, we've come a long way towards that awareness. But I think that's part of our natural evolution.
Would agree. And yeah, certainly, as you say, things have been changing. And now, of course, it can be the transformative time where, as you mentioned, more and more people are accessing these skills. And we may have, again, quite an interesting confluence of both tech development, along with all the interesting ideas this may bring, but also at the same time, consciousness development, or also, even more interestingly, the perspective that much of the, let's say, actual advanced technology, including the proper idea of artificial intelligence, which would just be an interface to our own higher selves, actually can only be created if we ourselves already understand that we contain all power and therefore all technology within ourselves. So yeah, that's certainly opening up a whole different level of understanding. And the other thing that comes to mind, of course, going with the theme of, let's say, transformation and the relearning of self-love, which we are playing out in this incarnation, apparently, Also, then would be the idea not anymore. I'm even thinking of the financial system now for some reason. Put trust or receive trust and credit, credence, belief from any very strange outside, apparently authority sources. But again, give credit to yourself, believe in yourself and each other, even with these things, in terms of just understanding that we live in a whatever infinite parallel reality universe, quantum universe, spiritual world, however you want to put it. So everyone can understand generally everything is possible. The question is what is probable and what do we really want? But at least to rather than having this, let's say, basic idea of a disbelief and distrust, again, have belief and trust in oneself and in each other that everything is possible, and that also these things, of course, again, can be possible, because we all know the story of Jesus, where in his own hometown he couldn't do any miracles because everyone just thought he's just a normal guy as they came to know him. But if we kind of switch that perspective of ourselves and each other from some, randomly formed human cell biorobot to an actual, divine being, one with the one creator and interconnected to everything and everyone. And if we have that as a default perspective on ourselves and each other, I guess that would be a very good foundation to accelerate all of these developments of a spiritual kind.
That's true. That's very true. So, to that note, uh, I'm really big about changing the world by changing your own world, and and radiating that out from you. And it took me a long time to really learn to unconditionally and truly love myself. And I would really like to offer that up as one of the most crucial parts of any of the evolvement that's going on, and being able to take that same projective energy and program that with unconditional love and send that out into the world. I've seen that have some really amazing effect. And, if you think about ways to use what we've been talking about doing, I think that's one of the best ones for me.
I would, of course, totally agree. And this is always what, in my understanding, also of channeling and of all kinds of information and higher self communication that always comes through, is again and again this idea that, of course, the true unconditionality of love is the very foundation of all existence itself and all creation, and is our own, actually, default and most basic, most primal energy. And then, of course, as you mentioned, just radiating that out into yourself, also meaning into your physicalized reality, which is just you on a different level. Then, and even just letting that go, not necessarily having any great intention aside from conditional love for yourself and everything and everyone. Then even here, it's almost like you can almost visualize that, how then the higher self is just taking that positive energy and just, constructing whatever positive ideas out of it. I think sometimes it really helps as well if one can visualize these ideas to some extent. At least for me, I noticed if I, let's say, actually am aware that quite oftentimes I see these things in images. So I get like schematics and so on. And I would also like your impression about this. Most people may remember as children having a very vivid imagination. And then at some point, this becoming less, I assume, due to the generalized brainwave states that we are entrained into according to our own development, but that actually, of course, with many different practices, mostly, of course, acting on your own excitement and loving yourself, you can actually, again, re-access these other uh, brainwave frequency bandwidths, and then realize you actually have a great capacity for imagination and can allow yourself to become aware of this again. What do you say about that?
Well, my personal experience was I had an amazing mother who watered me as an artist from the moment I was born. And so I maybe haven't had my imagination has always been my best friend. And my ability to see things in my mind and then draw those or make those, that's always been like the benchmark of any pretty much my entire life. And being able to see those things with clarity and intensity, yeah, I think opening up to that, I think across the board, create, that's one thing. It's like art, music, magic, it's all the same thing. It's all reaching into that flow of energy and bringing something back down. And they all radiate from one another. Like I do sigils with music now. The things I usually draw are explorations into something I'm learning. I'm such a picture boy, it's like if I can congeal it enough to see it in my mind and make a graphic representation of it, I seem to learn things faster and get there quicker. Um, but yes.
Of course, and also that's why I've kind of suggested to be winding down now, because just I noticed that all the topics we could get into, we could talk for hours and hours. However, there is at least one thing I'd like to bring up,
Okay.
aside, which is the whole question, let's say, of alignment. In some ways, we already spoke about it. I would say anyone being able to listen, either with mind or heart, and especially with both, can already tell the alignment and direction whatever you're proposing is going into, which is unconditional love. However, still, of course, for many individuals, these whole ideas of, let's say, effects or any type of apparently physical world or real world manipulation may raise some red flags or whatever, or then mentioning the golden dawn and so on and so forth. There's many different projections. We don't even have to get into all of those different perspectives. I would just be curious about your general idea and, let's say, reasoning or understanding or your approach regarding whatever may be called positive or negative, whether that's in a judgment based sense or just in a mechanistic consciousness energy type sense. Whatever you'd like to mention about that.
You know, I I get people want to assign whether you're using dark magic or you're using light magic. For me, it's not really magic; it's energy, and the energy that you are is pure potential, creative opportunity, and how that I've gotten a less moralistic or societal evaluation of what's dark and light, and look at it more from an energetic perspective of what is a positive flow and what is a negative flow. And not to mention the absolute, you know, people, people break, you can break the universe down very simply into two words: cause, effect. Energy gets pushed in waves in one direction. Those waves go out, affect things, and come back. And that's just the way the universe works. So if you keep I have a very strict moral code of my own, um, that I really never violate, and that keeps me in a good flow, and that keeps the synchronistic things of the world and life coming to me in a really positive, cool way. You know, if you're getting attacked by someone and your physical being is in danger, and you use your magic to stop that, I don't consider that a negative, evil thing. Although many people would house that in black magic, but it's that's not my perspective on it. My perspective on it is using the things that you have and being really like elevated in how you use them. Like, I'm talking about these things in very simple terms, but to me, finding what I have is really sacred. Probably the only really sacred thing in my whole life. And it it's not like something I do that's outside of the regular person that lives in the world. It's how I function in the world now. And I don't hurt people. I help. As a matter of fact, I just helped a friend get better. Um, I was going to talk about that earlier. One of the ways to use your healing or your energy is to heal people. And when you can do those kinds of things, when you can help people get along, when you can focus on win-win situations so everybody gets better, I think that's where I want to live and will continue to live, and will be how I, you know, use abilities that I acquire.
Maybe just to segue a little bit into the whole tarot topic, aside from, of course, what you mentioned that you created your own deck, one idea which I picked up somewhere, sometime, because I'm so far, of course, I do channelings, and basically, if anyone is asking me, I talk about these things all day, all the time, or whenever I'm asked at the very least. And I'm always kind of even wary of even suggesting, like, oh, now you have to go the path of unconditional love. From my perspective, all is one. So you can even become a Sith Lord, using these techniques. And, I'm always joking then and like graduate from this density. So then you become a demon lord or something. But what's so interesting to me is that, for example, in Law of One, in the raw material, they kind of describe that just from sixth density or late fifth density, you basically can't be negative anymore because the spiritual entropy is kind of, your bottom of energy is kind of falling out because you're negatively polarized. So you cannot even accumulate more energy to reach the next density. So there's a natural, let's say, limiting factor on whatever negative, mechanistically negative energies there may be. But then the other interesting idea I find, because for me it's like, as you say, the world is a mirror. So if you act negatively, you may be more susceptible to negative things or attacks or whatever happening to you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So it's kind of like, anyhow, everyone gets, in a sense, what they deserve. And in a sense, though it seems so multiplayer, they're kind of locked into their own frequency channel, energetic output anyhow. So, and if you don't resonate on that potentially negative level, then it can't touch you anyways. But just my question regarding the tarot is that I noticed or picked up this idea that some of the figures in, I guess, Rider-Waite or even Thoth are looking a certain way in terms of their faces. And that this may actually suggest that the so-called right-hand path, which would just be the idea in general of unconditional love and inclusion, and not dominating others or putting yourself above them or putting them down, but integrating all of those as aspects of yourself, that this, even in the tarot, is kind of the suggestion that this path is somewhat more protected. This may even also come from the raw material. I'd just be curious to know what you think about this idea.
That there's a natural protection and when you study so that things don't get you. Is that kind of what you were?
In a sense, yes, but that in particular, the so-called right-hand path, in terms of which way these figurines are looking, in a sense, which way they're facing, that this may be a somewhat more protected path than attempting anything of, dominating your reality or whatever.
Well, I think that people. I have a different view on the tarot than most people I know, and my view of this, as in all divinatory systems, is that you're not really looking for information from outside entities or outside things outside you. We talked about the bands earlier. Um, there's another you that lives in the next six bands and is functioning in a lot right alongside you. And as you grow, he grows, and vice versa. And he's accessible, although he's vibrating at such a a high frequency that it takes a lot of energy to get up to be that bright. But my mindset is that what you're actually doing is, and he's infinitely more evolved than we are, and in this plane. So what you're actually learning to do with any divination system is creating a system of symbols and teaching that language to your ally, your higher self, and that using those symbols, you wind up getting a connection with him, and with understanding that communication back and forth between the you that really knows what's going on. And you know, Crowley was a freak, and he went down some really dark places that I like had wanted nothing to do with. And I think that after, yeah, I may piss some people off with this, but he was a roaring cocaine addict and an opium addict for a long time, and that winds up rotting your brain and making you do strange, weird stuff that is just perverted. And I think a lot of the goodness that he started off with, and a lot of the things that he discovered, got completely perverted in that zone. And the top deck, I don't. Some people find that to be a dark deck. I don't have that same. I don't have that same vision. There are dark cards, but I mean the whole gig is that you're asking, for information about existence and what's going on in the immediate astral environment. It's not all rosy. It's not all the Ace of Cups or the Ten of Pentacles. You've got the Tower in there. You got the Ten of Swords. Ow. But that's about getting information, and I don't really attach morality to that. You know, that's like just pure info to me. And then how you interpret that and what you do with that, I guess that's where morality comes into. Like, if like I have this real thing. I have a friend who does readings, and he won't tell somebody something bad if that's what he sees. And my mindset is, if somebody's genuinely asking you for help and for information, then you owe them the truth as you see it, and the wonderful thing about the tarot deck is that people look at that as a sentence sometimes, like, oh no, this is what's going to happen. But I look at it as like the weather forecast. And if you're prepared for what's coming, you dress right, you carry an umbrella if it's going to storm, you wear a coat when it's snowing, and you know how to attenuate some of the rough bumps, life sends your way, and do that for other people as well. And so I don't know. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And just one example that comes to mind, the tarot, and especially those that don't know much about it, is then of course the 13 comes up, the death card, and people are like, oh, I'm gonna die. Even though, of course, the other attribution is simply change,
Yeah, really,
transformation,
really, really
or
large,
even
really, really large change, quickly.
or even as with the Gnostics, as I understand, they even call the card immortality, which of course then is a wholly different world, completely different spin on it. So what I like about the tarot, and also the way you describe the neutral approach, is that it can really teach you to simply see things as they are and neutrally just see the aspects of any energy.
That's a
And
great point. That's a great point. That's a great point. To be able to objectively, without emotions, look at the facts is that's, yes, absolutely. That's a perfect skill to have, and not one I see demonstrated very often.
yeah, so the tarot can be a great teacher of that idea, and then really allow yourself this awareness of being all archetypes, being all energies, and then the tarot just becoming like this computer screen, momentary readout, reflection, like getting your bank account statement, or I don't know what a good example would be. Of course, a very flexible tool depending on how you define your reading. Then, depending on how much trust you put into your own consciousness, you can technically do pretty much anything with tarot, I would say. I use it,
Absolutely, absolutely. I totally
yeah.
agree.
So I use it quite sparingly or only for specific ideas. However, it's
One of
yeah,
the
please.
things I wanted to bring up was, the first 22 cards in the tarot deck are called the major arcana cards. And those cards deal with universal issues. And then the rest of the cards, minor arcana cards, deal kind of with daily, day to day stuff. But those 22 cards are not just random cards. The first card is the Fool, which represents you starting off on a new journey, naive, not knowing exactly where he's going to go, but just happy to be going off on this amazing adventure. And then each one of the successive cards, the magician, the fool meets a magician, and he gets his magical abilities, and then he goes and meets the priestess, and he learns about intuition and the veil and piercing the veil and getting the secrets, and then he meets the empress, and he learns about love and pleasure and prosperity, and so each one of those, that 22 card ending up at the universe, which is, now that you've learned all your lessons, now you're ready to go out and go again, and it's like all the marbles, so that whole process is a little path of self-initiation and self-awareness that I've done many, 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 many times. And every time I think I've made a little grasp up to the next step, I like to go back and do that again and go through that same little ritual. The tarot has so many. The thing I love the most, I've been doing the tarot for 30 years, and it it only grows for me. I've never run out of uh, new uses for it, or new surprises, or going deeper within each of those realities, because each of those major arcana cards are realities unto themselves. And a lot of people have said about my deck is that those wind up becoming like doorways, like little windows into that world. And that was my hope when I made them. So that's it's a really crazy system, um, that will be with you and help you at no matter where, what level of evolution you're on at the moment.
I would say what I would just like to briefly emphasize is that, just as you mentioned, it's about creating an interface. So kind of like you telling yourself, all right, this is a method I wish to use, and your higher self then just arranges itself through tarot or numerology to actually deliver information in these ways.
Well,
So
you have to use it enough that you actually get a good. You teach each other the language, and once that happens, then your readings become like over the top, like good.
yes, makes perfect sense. Well, I would say, do you have any, for this, let's say, very first round, any closing statements or anything else that you would like to bring up?
Well, I just like to first of all thank you for letting me share the things that have made my life rich. And I really hope that out there's a person or two that latches on and they find that same richness themselves. And I would just love to wish everybody love and uh, growth and a lot of joy. And that'll pretty much do it for me.
All right, then I would like to thank you so much at this point, Brian. I sincerely wish we'll do more shows.
I would love
And
to do that.
then I'll just play one last track by Bonobo Cyrus, and we'll be off. And thanks to you once again. Thanks to all the listeners. And yeah, magic exists.
It really does. All right, we'll see you later, Raphael.